The film opens up in the late 1880s as our protagonist, Eugenia Clary, a wealthy but rebellious young woman, attending the funeral of a celebrated writer, Victor Hugo, in Paris. As an avid reader, Eugenia seeks validation for her beliefs in books, which often gets her in trouble with her father, Francois Clary, a strict French aristocrat. This is why, when she comes back home after the funeral, she lies about being with a friend of her family. However, Eugenia has a special ability to talk to the dead and communicate their thoughts with the living. When she interacts with them, she will get panic attack and does things involuntarily. Until now, she has only had a few such experiences, but as Eugenia grows up, she is becoming more and more prone to such manic episodes. Nobody in her family except her brother, Theophilus, knows about her special ability. Later that night, Eugenia tucks her old grandmother to bed. The grandma asks if she attended Victor Hugo's funeral, and Eugenia happily gushes about the large crowd that was in attendance, which is an unusual reaction to a funeral. Later, as Eugenia walks back to her bedroom, she hears strange noises coming from one of the rooms nearby. With only a match to illuminate the way, she investigates the suspicious commotion and finds her brother making out with a man. Instead of being angry, she smiles and rushes back to her room. The following day, she sneaks into her brother, Theophilus's carriage, asking him to drop her off at the market. He discovers that she knows about his homosexual relationship, but trusts her enough to know she won't tell their father. Eugenia is not allowed to go outside alone, but her brother cannot protest, now that she knows his secret. A while later, she drops off at the market, where she enjoys some alone time walking down the street. Then she enters a cafe and sits across from a man reading a strange book about spirits. The two exchange glances until the guy introduces himself and immediately starts flirting with her. Even though Eugenia is initially uncomfortable, she eventually feels at ease because of his jokes. She admits that she wasn't looking at him, but at the book that he was reading. Before Eugenia leaves, the man lends her the book and asks her to return it when she is done reading. That night, Eugenia starts reading the book and is instantly intrigued by it. It has chapters about the spirit world, the purpose of their existence, and even about the human-spirit interactions. This gives Eugenia a lot of information about herself and what she can do to help the spirits who want her assistance. While she is reading the book, her brother joins her, and the siblings cuddle and talk about their romantic relationships. After a few days, the siblings and their family go on an outing with another wealthy family. The daughter of the visiting family is single, so their families want her to take an interest in Theophilus. Although he is not interested in women in general, Theophilus pretends to like her, so that he doesn't seem suspicious. Eugenia sees her brother struggling and interrupts the two. Unfortunately, Theophilus's potential wife gets insulted because of this interference and leaves the siblings alone. Enraged by this behavior, Francois reprimands Eugenia. He has always been apathetic towards her because she doesn't fit the stereotypical wealthy girl of her times and is sympathetic to the weak, which her father thinks is a quality of the poor. One night, Eugenia helps her grandmother brush her hair as her regular nightly routine. Suddenly, she stops mid-sentence and goes through an intense manic episode. She involuntarily pulls out a drawer and starts making a mess of the things inside before finding an antique necklace. When her maniac episode stops, her grandmother is shocked to see the necklace, as it was a gift from her late husband, which has been missing for the past 40 years. The family had thought someone had stolen it and stopped looking for it decades ago. The old woman always knew Eugenia was special, but on seeing what she could do, she is unsure if it is a good gift. She asks her granddaughter how she knew where the necklace was, and Eugenia replies that her grandfather's spirit told her the location. The following morning, Eugenia is woken up by her mother and informed that her father wants to take her to the market. Eugenia is excited and unable to notice the sadness in her mother's voice. She naively gets dressed and joins her father and brother in a carriage. Even after noticing the vast change in her brother's behavior, she doesn't suspect anything strange. It is only when her eyes land on the luggage under the seat that she realizes they are not just going to the market. She looks out the window and sees a woman staring into nothingness. Two attendants from a hospital called orderlies come to pick her up and forcefully drag her into the saltpeter hospital. She begs her father and brother to help her, but both of them remain silent. When she is far enough, her brother starts vomiting out of fear and guilt. Inside the saltpeter hospital, she is stripped naked and checked for any physical injuries or abnormalities. Throughout all of this, she protests that she is not insane, but only the doctors of the institute can decide that now. Her freedom is snatched away, and her sole purpose becomes to prove that she is not insane while every minute detail of her character is studied. She also has to share a room with many other women, some of whom are mentally ill, while the others have been falsely put into the institute by powerful men who want to get rid of them. The sanest one out of all of them is a woman named Louise. She befriends Eugenie and helps her settle in. Although mentally better than the rest of the women, Louise still behaves quite eccentric from time to time. The following morning, Louise is taken to be examined by the male doctors of the asylum. They hypnotize her and treat her like a subject to their experiments rather than a patient. They are not in the least sympathetic when she falls and starts trembling because of their malpractices. The only staff member who cares about the patients is the head nurse, Genevieve. She is a kind woman who is aware of the doctor's cruel ways of treating patients, but cannot raise her voice against her employers. A while later, a young doctor named Jules comes to Louise and pretends like he is worried for her. In reality, he is a pervert who lusts for his female patients and takes advantage of their situations. He has promised Louise that he will marry her someday, and because of this, she lets him pleasure himself in front of her. As days pass, Eugenie starts getting more intense manic episodes. She hides them well and doesn't let anyone know about her power, as she is scared of being experimented on. But one afternoon, she tells Nurse Genevieve, in a moment of weakness, that she talked to Genevieve's late sister, and proves it by saying things that only Genevieve would know. The nurse is shocked, but she still doesn't want to believe her. The following day is the day of Eugenia's final evaluation. The doctor asks her several questions and makes her admit that she has been seeing spirits again. When he says that she has to be kept in the asylum for longer, Eugenia loses patience and starts yelling at him. However, this turns out to be a massive mistake, as the doctor points out her outburst and declares that she has hysteria. In the asylum, anyone with hysteria has to go through hydrotherapy, where patients are laid in a box full of ice for hours until their body goes numb. Many women have died because of this practice, but the doctors believe it is the best way to make women less aggressive. Eugenie protests and refuses to oblige, but the orderlies throw her into the box and restrain her inside. She shivers and begs for several minutes before giving up and accepting her fate. In the evening, Genevieve is on her way back home when she feels someone's presence behind her. It turns out to be Eugenia's brother, Theophilus, who is worried about her and wants to know how she is doing. Genevieve decides to stay true to her professional etiquette as a nurse and maintains her patient's confidentiality. But before leaving, he hands her the book about spirits that Eugenie was reading before being sent to the asylum. Genevieve is supposed to give the book to Eugenie. However, she cannot help but read it herself. First, she completes the entire thing in one night and is disturbed by its content. Although Genevieve is a true believer in science, the book makes her register that Eugenie could be telling the truth about thee. Meanwhile, in the asylum, Eugenie is finally let free from the hydrotherapy tank. She cuddles with Louise to remain warm for the rest of the night, but hardly gets any sleep. The next day, Eugenia is approached by Genevieve, who wants to communicate with her late sister. She offers Eugenia the book and the chance to meet her brother if she agrees to help her. However, Eugenia replies that a meeting with her brother is not enough. She wants her complete freedom from this mental institute. It is next to impossible, but Genevieve promises to do what she can. In the following scene, Eugenia and Genevieve are alone together in a room. Eugenia is trying to form a connection with Genevieve's sister, but is unsuccessful. As Genevieve starts questioning her powers, something takes over Eugenie. She starts trembling and says that something bad has happened to Genevieve's father. Not wanting to take the risk, the nurse runs to her home and finds a bloodied napkin on the dining table. Fortunately, she reaches just in time to rescue her father, who is about to fall unconscious. A month passes in the asylum in the state fashion. Eugenia freezes in an ice bath every day, has to get her ovaries checked frequently, and watches the other girls be mistreated by the doctors. One afternoon, she notices a patient suffering a major seizure due to an overdose of the doctor's medicine. They show no remorse for being the cause of her misery and instead joke about her situation. Enraged by their nonchalance, she calls them out for using women to fulfill their dirty desires and their absurd medical theories. When she doesn't stop cursing at them, she is sent into isolation under a different nurse named Jean. Jean is sadistic and treats the patients like toys, much like the male doctors. In isolation, Eugenia is kept in a tiny room with only one window that remains closed most of the day. Inside the room, she hears the voices of many spirits who have died there. It is terrifying to her, and she begs and cries to be put somewhere else, but all in vain. As days pass, Eugenia gets more and more scared of her isolated prison-like room. Jean only gives her a minute of sunlight and closes the window for most of the day. She eats leftover food and loses sleep because of all the noises made by the spirits. As a result, her health deteriorates rapidly. One afternoon, Jean enters the room and mocks Eugenia. Eugenia keeps quiet as the nurse eats freshly baked, delicious food in front of her. Suddenly, she gets a vision of Jean's late mother and finds out she also died in the same room after Jean falsely admitted her to the asylum. The nurse remains unfazed by the information and doesn't regret killing her own mother. But then, Eugenie brings up the topic of her child's death. It is revealed that Jean's mother murdered her child, which is why she got her admitted in this mental asylum and subsequently killed her. Jean breaks down into tears for a few seconds before strangling Eugenia. She orders her to keep her child's name out of her mouth before walking away, leaving Eugenie shaken. Following this, Jean is walking down the hallway when one of the girls from the asylum bumps into her and steals the keys to the isolation rooms. She then hands them to Genevieve, revealing that it was her idea to steal them. Later, she goes to Eugenia's room and talks to her through the door. Eugenia has communicated with Genevieve's sister, and once again she transfers their messages to each other. This gives both Genevieve and the spirit of her dead sister closure. Genevieve is so thankful that she decides to help Eugenia to get out of the asylum. Later that day, she tells the head doctor that Eugenia has improved exponentially ever since she was moved into isolation. Although suspicious, he allows her to join the common ward again. After coming out of the dark room, Eugenia meets Louise, who is now bound to a wheelchair because of all the malpractices she was forced to go through. After a few months comes the day of the annual ball in the asylum. It is the one day in the year when the women get to dress up, dance, and enjoy life as though they were normal. Eugenia's brother also gets an invitation and joins the party. The siblings see each other after almost a year, but have to act like they don't know each other. In the meantime, in another room, the doctors flirt with the women and take advantage of their authority. Louise is also approached by Jules, who uses his same old promises to make her consent to whatever he wishes. Meanwhile, Eugenia and her brother make a run for it through the front gate, where they are almost caught by Jean. But the other victim women help them by restraining the nurse. The women then go wild after the siblings manage to escape and start hitting the doctors. Jules is strangled to the ground and finally taught a lesson by Louise. Outside, Genevieve refuses to come with Eugenia as she wants to remain with the other women who need her. The final scene shows the aftermath of the escape from the asylum. Several months later, Eugenie lives on the coast of France, far from everything she has ever known. She is happy and satisfied for the first time in her life. Then there is Genevieve, who has herself been admitted to the asylum. However, she is at peace with herself and her situation, especially knowing that her late sister is in a better place. The movie is inspired by true events. The movie documents the tales of mistreatment faced by women in a Paris hospital in the late 19th century. This film serves as a powerful reminder that every individual deserves to be heard, valued, and treated with dignity. It is only by embracing our collective humanity and advocating for change that we can break free from the shackles of oppression and forge a path towards acceptance and inclusivity. Let us know in the comments below what you would have done differently if you were Eugenia.